Welcome to Families Are First Teachers, a video series designed to support families who are supporting learners at home. Presently, many families are finding themselves having to help their children navigate remote schoolwork. Some caregivers say they are feeling like substitute teachers for their own kids these days. However, what we know about families is that they are children's first and often best teachers. These short videos are designed by experts in curriculum and instruction, behavior, and special education at the Summit Educational Service Center and State Support Team Region 8, with the goal of empowering families for their new teaching roles they find themselves in. My name is Dr. Carrie Spangler, and I am the lead educational audiologist at the Summit Educational Service Center. And today we're going to talk about mask hearing and why hearing is foundation. A little bit else about myself is I have been in the field of educational audiology for over 20 years, and I love my job. In addition to my professional knowledge, I also have a personal journey of growing up with hearing loss, wearing hearing aids for most of my life, and actually getting a cochlear implant last year. So I wear a cochlear implant on my left ear, and I wear a hearing aid on my right ear. This is a quote from one of my former professors and audiologist, and I love this quote. It says, hearing is not optional. It's not something that is nice to have. Every child needs to have consistent access to clear speech and acoustic detail in order to succeed. So what is hearing? Hearing is a first order event. It is foundation for spoken language, for reading and literacy, for academics and overall life functioning. For kids, it's important to know that the auditory centers of the brain are not fully developed until the age of 15. And we know kids are not tiny little adults. They don't have years and years of auditory knowledge to draw from. They have immature auditory systems. And that's critical to point out because about 75% of learning occurs through listening, both directly and incidentally, meaning overhearing what is going on in the world. And when we talk about hearing, it's not the ears. The ears are the doorway. We're talking about auditory brain development. So hearing is one of our senses that we can't see. It is invisible. And a lot of times hearing is assumed and we overlook it. We take our hearing for granted. As I already said, the auditory neural pathway is underdeveloped until about the age of 15. So all of our kids who are in the schools are pretty much at risk for some kind of auditory delay for development. Now, in this picture, you see a little baby who is being tested or screened for hearing in the hospital. Your baby or your child was probably screened in the hospital before they left. And this is an important procedure. If they did not pass their hearing screening and you have not followed up, please do so now. This is important to find out, rule in or rule out whether or not that hearing screening was showed something else. We also need to know that hearing loss can develop at any time in our life. So it can develop as an infant, as a toddler, as a school-age child, in the adolescence and adulthood. So that is also important to know. Just because a baby passes a newborn hearing screening doesn't mean they're okay with their hearing health forever. And it's also important to know that about 15% of school-age children have some degree of hearing loss, whether that's because of an ear infection and the sound isn't conducted into the ear very well, or it's a nerve type of a hearing loss. 3 out of 100 school-age children have a unilateral hearing loss, meaning a hearing loss in one ear. which research shows can negatively impact how a child performs in school. And 40% of kids with hearing loss have some other additional diverse needs that we need to also be aware of. So I wanted to play a hearing loss simulation, and this is on YouTube called the Flintstones Hearing Loss. And I want you to understand, as you see the little graph on the side that is called an audiogram, that the difference between mild, moderate, and severe hearing loss. So a mild hearing loss is really not mild when you listen to it. Mild hearing loss is a child that might have an ear infection. They would have a mild degree of hearing loss. And just listen to the difference between the different degrees. And I also want you to pay attention to the fact that you can hear what is being said, but the clarity gets worse and worse. And no matter what degree it is, there's going to be impaired ability to have clear speech.
One, two, three, four, five, six, seven.
Aha! You're on my apartment building on Granite Avenue. You owe me $300. Get it up?
Fred, take it easy. It's only a game.
Wilma, I'm just like them big tycoons. I play to win. Now, Barney, pay up or get out of the game.
That's one down and two to go. Betty, it's your turn.
I don't have any more money either. You got it all.
Then I'll take the mortgage on your orphan's home.
Well, come on, take the dice, will you? Don't just sit there like a dummy. I will not have you talking that way to our guests. Come on, Barney. I think we better go home.
So I hope you were able to hear the difference between the different degrees of hearing loss, but also realize that no matter, mild does not mean mild, or it still presents with a significant ability to understand clear speech.
One, two, three.
Here is a visual of what hearing loss might look like as well. And from the top, you'll see I have really clear speech. So you can read, I see some beautiful flowers very easily. And as you go down the scale, you'll notice how much more difficult it is to read what is being presented. And that is almost like trying to filter out speech from background noise. And it can be really difficult, and it can be very taxing on the auditory system. So just another way to kind of visualize hearing and hearing loss. So what are some red flags of hearing loss? One, if your child has delayed speech, you want to make sure that their hearing has been tested or screened. If your child is not speaking clearly, again, another reason to have your hearing checked. If a child can't follow basic directions, says ha and what frequently, is playing video games or watching different shows at a very elevated volume, or if they're missing developmental or learning milestone. Screening for hearing is quick and easy, and it should always be done if you had any of those red flag concerns. Many times, like I said, babies are screened in the hospital before they leave, and at the pediatrician's office, they might screen hearing at different well visits. When they get to school, they do screen hearing at different grade levels. That is determined by the Ohio Department of Health. But as parents, as teachers, if you have concerns about any child's hearing, know that an audiologist can test your child's hearing at any age. So Because we're in a pandemic and because we are in different learning environments, whether your kids are going to school, whether we have a hybrid approach, whether we are learning remotely, it is important to think about these different listening considerations. And I wanted to talk a little bit about listening in the classroom as well as listening at home. So if you have been out in the community, which most of us have, you know that we are all wearing masks, and you know we are all trying to physically distance from each other. And as adults, you've probably been in a situation at a grocery store or the doctor's office, when somebody's talking to you and you are having a hard time understanding what is being said. There are increased hearing and listening demands with the pandemic right now because of mask and physical distancing. Then you add on just the everyday pre-pandemic difficulties such as background noise, reverberation, or that echo that happens in different situations, just how far away you might be from someone or the direction you might be listening in, and it becomes exhausting. So I wanted to give a couple of tips today about listening in the classroom as well as listening at home. So this is a study that was done. I'm not going to go too much detail into this, but it was really looking at how much face masks are degrading high-frequency speech sounds. Now, what does that mean? High-frequency speech sounds is like the S sound, the SH sound, the TH sound, the CH sound. So if you think about the difference between cat, cats, and catch, if we filter out high-frequency information, you're not able to determine if I said one cat or two cats, because we have just filtered out a lot of that information by wearing masks. So that's really what this slide is showing, is that face masks degrade high-frequency speech sound. High-frequency speech sounds are critical for intelligibility of speech. They're critical for phonemic awareness of speech. They're critical for following direction. They're critical for so much of what we need in order to learn and understand in the classroom. So basically, all of our kids who are in the schools are at risk for degraded speech and physical distancing. Some of our kids with hearing loss, identified hearing loss, with auditory processing difficulty, with learning disabilities, attention, behavior, developmental challenges, visual challenges, English as a second language, we are even more at risk for mask, degraded speech, and physical distancing. So what can we do? What kind of auditory enhancements can we look at for mask hearing? One of the first things is trying to reduce as much background noise as possible. So our classroom was spread out a little bit more. There might not be as many kids in the classroom, which helps with that reduced background noise, but just knowing, if there's a fan on or a vent on or the windows open, that if we can reduce some of that background noise, it's gonna help with overcoming some of those masks. Now, if a teacher has a classroom amplification system, using that right now is going to help immensely with mask listening. It's also going to help the teacher's voice as well. So if there's any administrators listening to this, this might be something to look into for some of the funds that you might have received for the COVID-19 pandemic. If you have a student with hearing loss, using their personal microphone is essential right now. Kids with hearing loss are already at a disadvantage, and they're even more at a disadvantage with physical distancing and mask listening. repeating what was being said, creating a class signal for unclear messages. So having these visible check-ins where you have thumbs up, does everybody understand what we're doing? Thumbs down, I need you to repeat what's being said. And just a regular check-in for comprehension. So all of these are really important for auditory enhancements for mask listening. Creating some more visuals right now, right? I don't know about you, but putting on a mask, it is hard to recognize who anybody is anymore. So even having a button with your picture on it is going to give you a good visual of who you're talking to and have a personal connection, that visual connection. But even if we can't see the entire face, gain attention, eyes on me. We're doing a lot of reading of our expressions and feeling through our eyes right now. Anything that we can write down is going to be helpful. If you have an important lesson that you want kids to really understand, video yourself without a mask so that they can see your face and understand more clearly what you're saying. If possible, you can turn on captioning. So there are a lot of automated captions options available. They're not perfect by any stretch, but they're getting better and better every day. So that's something else that you can think about. And using video demonstration and providing notes ahead of time so that you have a visual to keep up with that auditory information that you might be missing. The other thing I like to say is show your smile. So there are clear masks available out there. A lot of people are selling them. I would just some of them are better than others for sure, and you can't wear them for extended periods of time, but you can wear them for short, important lessons that you might want to be able to see more of your face in the classroom type environment. So let's talk a little bit about virtual learning as well, because whether or not you're doing hybrid or you're all in, if we do have to go back to virtual learning, these are some of the different tips that are really helpful for ensuring that a student is able to understand what is going on their end, and that the teachers have the right tools on their end to teach effectively. So parents, if you're at home, making sure that you have a quiet place for your student to learn, like setting up a desk and almost a school room for them, is really important. Like turning off as much background noise as possible. So doing, homework with the TV on the couch for class is probably not going to be the best place for auditory listening. And remember, the auditory brain is not fully developed until age 15. So we need to give our kids as much possibility for getting that auditory information as possible. So some other things that you can do is using a microphone, headset mic, so that they can hear and understand a little bit better. There's a clearer signal that goes through. Making sure that you have good lighting. So when you have your video on, which is also important, that you can see the person who is on the video. Making sure you mute microphones when you're not talking. So that makes it really a lot easier to follow who is going to talk next and reduce a lot of that background noise. Determining a way to ask questions, so whether it's a hand signal or using a chat feature, is really important to establish. And like I said, a lot of these platforms now do have captioning available, so learning how to turn that on can help fill in some of those gaps too. Checking for comprehension. And then the other thing is just stating whoever you're calling on next, so that you can find someone on the video screen and also know who is going to say something. So these are all different tips for both teaching and learning virtually. And as I said earlier, you probably noticed as adults when we're listening to other people with masks on, when we're wearing a mask all day long, we are getting tired. Our kids who have immature auditory system are going to need brain breaks because if the ears are just listening, it's the auditory brain that is working at a increased speed to keep up with mask and learning. So scheduling some brain breaks is going to be really important. Now, if your child does have an identified hearing challenge, and kind of thinking back to that Flintstones video, even mild degree of a hearing loss is going to create a challenge in our mask physical distance world. So make sure you contact the educational audiologist at your school so that you can get some more tips on how to ensure that your child with a hearing challenge is getting all of the different tips and accommodations that are needed in order to be successful, whether in person, hybrid, or at home. And the Department of Education has a website. And if you want to learn more about the role of the educational audiologist, please visit that website. There's a nice video by my colleague, Dr. Jessica Heffler, talking about educational audiology on this website. And there is a one-page handout about educational audiology and what our role is in the schools. So that concludes my session today on mask hearing. And I just want to thank all of you for joining. If you found this video helpful, you can find additional ones just like this one on the Summit Educational Service Center YouTube channel. Just visit YouTube and search for Summit ESC. There you'll find additional brief videos for diverse learners, developing a growth mindset, and academic content supports. We hope that these videos provide some new ideas, resources, and tips for supporting your learner at home and in life. Thank you for all that you do.